This video has been brought to you by all the animators being saved to work on this single episode. The big climax is here, the Black Swordsman versus the Angel of Death in one final big showdown as they go full incarnate. The War of Underworld has come to a close with this climax, but there are still 3 more episodes to look forward to as the war on Ocean Turtle is still continuing and we got a lengthy conclusion to the entire Alicization saga to follow afterwards in the epilogue. But that's the next 3 weeks. For this week, welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk, your best source of Art Online information, and this is Alicization Explained featuring War of Underworld episode 20, The Night Sky Sword. Short overview, we have adapted from the first couple of pages of chapter 22 part 2 until the end of the chapter 22, or rather chapter 21 part 3's first couple paragraph with the in-between content pushed to the next episode. Whichever way you wanna take it, it's about 45 pages tops, and 45 pages mean a strong adaptation with short scenes getting cut. It was a marvel on the animation side of things, as expected from A1's actual gods taking the helm for this episode. We still had quite the chunky cuts though. Luckily, nothing that will be particularly trigger anybody this week or awfully vital. But still, some of them were quite the iconic scenes, but worry not, we'll cover all of it here. But if you're new to my Explained series, what I do here is essentially provide you all the vital information on characters, events, action, lore from the source material, light novels. Things that the anime did not convey properly or just did not have the time to, so you can still see the full picture. If you want to jump to specific events, timestamps will be in the description along with Amazon and Book2Story affiliate links, so you can grab the light novels for yourselves. Remember, now that we're officially in the maximum acceleration phase, it is the perfect time to read Moon Cradle, the 2-volume side story that takes place a year and a half after the acceleration began inside Underworld. And it's something that the anime will not be adapting in the Alicization season, so I recommend you jump on that. That's volume 19 and volume 20 for you. With that, let's cast away the sly foxes spreading misinformation and get on with Alicization Explained. I need to first get the obvious out of the way so we can just continue with the actual contents. The animation is fucking top tier stuff here. As I said, all the top tier staff members are here, from animators to storyboarders to effects artists, so I'll just make this blanket statement right here that everything is absolutely incredible, and I won't talk about how amazing every single cut is. Just wanted to get it out here because I know there'll be those 5 people out there who are gonna go, "Why you never praise the animation?" It's because my Explained series is not a typical review. It aims to explain the intricacies of the scenes and the world, if you haven't realized from the title. But there's also an incredible amount of detail in animation that you may never realize, so those small things I will mention as part of that explanation process, of course. And it's kinda ironic that after saying all that I have to start with this, but I really used Amayore and Takiguri for a cool ending shot last week, and the moment this episode starts at the exact same point, they're just falling down to their deaths, so it's so much for continuity there. Anyways, this was the scene I was talking about last week to see if they would cut it or not, but no, they covered it very briefly, and it's not like after you see Kirito turn Poe into a tree, you would absolutely need to know the details of what he just did there to understand what's happening in the anime. But as I always say, I'm pleased with the anime if all I have to do is fill the little holes left here and there to expand the world and concepts rather than retelling entire chapters. Now let me be frank, we do not know exactly what Kirito did. This scene, until a bit later, is told from Alice's perspective entirely, and she states she can only try to interpret what had happened, and her assumption is as follows. As the HP of the dragons are so high on their own, mere element generation and healing sacred arts deriving from that generation, it would not be able to restore their health to its fullest, especially with the wounds they had suffered already. And unlike what Kirito did back after the Poe battle, he no longer has the excess energy stored in the Night Sky Sword either to use as a healing bank. So what he did, well, what Alice believes he did, is that he simply shrank the maximum health value of the dragons, and the only way to do it without being an actual admin in the world to tamper with actual data is to rewind their age. Remember, that is exactly what Quinella had done when she was old a couple hundred years ago. By rewinding the dragons as much as possible, he was able to not only heal the little HP they would have afterwards, but also potentially allow Alice to see them again if she were to ever log back in. The scene with Asuna creating the stairs, I feel a bit animated liberally, let's say. Asuna is pretty much destroyed mentally after all the time she used the Stacia ability already, and to see her create such wide stairs, I just couldn't help but chuckle. And also, it didn't occur to me when reading the novels, but goddamn, you could have had Alice run to the farthest side and she just would be lifted when the stairs are coming up, but hey, at least there's no weird tension boosters like tripping when climbing the stairs, so it's not like it matters, especially you don't really get physically exhausted the same way in Underworld. Oh boy, that's a very old reference. I believe that was the first Alicization Explained of the Human Realm arc where I explained how physical fatigue actually works in Underworld. And again, with how much was cut from Asuna fighting all the pain in previous weeks, it may look weird when she appears to be shaking it off quite easily here, but yeah, as I said, she had shaken off much worse over the course of the previous hours, and if those scenes would not have been cut, you would understand that this is barely a scratch in her mind. Now, for the actual big guns as the fight is approaching, would you be surprised if I said the anime completely changed Kirito's tone from the beginning of the fight? It's baffling, really. We always say anime hates inner monologues, that's why it's never adapted, but we did get Alice's inner monologue just before the OP, and then we see Kirito remembering Kiku's warning as a flashback, which was actually the minor extension of the actual inner monologue by Kirito here. How he remembers the warning alone really makes it look like Kirito is aiming to win this quickly to manage a last second escape, whereas his actual inner monologue that was cut was, Alice, Asuna, this is goodbye. It's clearly indicating Kirito has made up his mind to sacrifice himself in order to allow them to escape. He's not there to defeat Subtilizer, he's there to stall him long enough to both get stuck in Underworld, whereas Alice and Asuna can run away. And the reason he's not telling the others, obviously, is because he knows if he says anything about being stuck, they would simply stay back and fight along too. Kirito's exchange with Gabriel, despite shortened, is quite great with the way Subti just immediately responds to every question and it turns it around to affect Kirito with his own incarnation, causing every answer to slowly slip from Kirito's mind. He goes through over half a dozen titles to give as a response from his past before Eugeo comes to his rescue and reminds him who he really is. When Kirito asks Subtilizer his name, his head was still not properly recovered from the void, but when Subtilizer responded with his real life name, Gabriel Miller, Kirito sensed the appearance of the guy turn a bit more real rather than the expression that was so void that he felt getting sucked into it. Obviously a minor nod to the fact that talking about his real identity briefly broke Subtilizer's grip on his own incarnation there. These are the neat little details I love, and holy shit, they actually adapted that minor effect. Wow, I sure as hell was not expecting this. I wouldn't have seen it if I wasn't going frame by frame. Well done, A1. Well fucking done. Also, this may be a good time to mention this. The white grainy background you see when looking towards the altar, towards the south, that is actually a huge wall to prevent Underworlders from ever being able to surpass the allocated limits of the world, just in case they never encounter something they cannot comprehend without proper guidance, which is, again, going back to episode 6 explained, I believe, of the Human Realm arc, the reason they picked a medieval setting for the simulation was because they would be much more in control of what happens with much less variables compared to a modern simulation, for example. Of course, in the case of them surpassing the wall, the seed package is more than capable of doing what is necessary to fill the area, but that's an entirely different topic. The fight, including the wings, is very much accurate to the novels. I mean, accurate as in all the inner monologues and mental struggles and tactics are completely ignored as usual. Kinda accurate, so let's start from the beginning. There was a reason Gabriel decided to stay and fight, aside from the fact that he estimated Alice to take about 5 minutes to get up, the boy looked quite boring to him at first. Unlike Bercouli and Shinon he fought earlier, he possessed no fighting spirit as far as he could sense when he got a short grasp at his soul at the beginning of their exchange. And aside from that moment, he did not get a single taste from his soul in general, making him quite the unfun target for the soul fetishist guy over here. But when he transformed his coat into wings and summoned all elements to attack him, Subtilizer was simply impressed by the boy's proficiency in this world and found it to be a worthy effort to absorb his knowledge for when he built his own VR world to store Alice in. And that was the reason he decided to fight Kirito properly for about 3 minutes. And possibly to your surprise, there's a shit ton of mental battles going on for both characters here. Kirito seeing that he is simply absorbing all the attacks and trying to think of a way to actually harm Subtilizer, and on the other side, Subtilizer was getting more and more curious where that confident smile on the kid's face was coming from, and initially assumed the kid was just bluffing his confidence to buy some time. His first act to break the kid's spirit was to proclaim the fact that he had already stolen something from the kid, as his jetpack bat disappeared into wings behind his back to mimic Kirito's wings, but much edgier for someone who bears the name of an archangel. When Gabriel finally turned into his Angel of Death form, however, that was when he properly understood all the little tricks Kirito had been showcasing throughout the fight. And looking at Gabriel extend his grasp over Incarnation, Kirito in front of him was losing his hope of actually stalling the guy long enough to allow Alice and Asuna to escape. They kinda did hint at it during his inner monologue too, which surprised me, but then I realized it wasn't an inner monologue, it was an inner dialogue with Eugeo instead, so no wonder this one didn't get cut. But there comes the iconic scene they decided to cut this time around. Remember the time Kirito ripped out his own heart to crush it in his nightmare sequence? Well, we had a massive reference to it here, with Subtilizer going for his heart to rip it and eat it up, and that's why the entire scene you see Kirito completely soulless after Eugeo talks to him, and while the anime portrayed his soulless bluff, they decided to cut the reason for it. He was simply playing Gabriel here for him to eat his heart, whereas he had just created countless razor-shaped metallic elements in his physical heart just to back up his words to hurt Gabriel when he was least expecting, another one of his tricks to catch him off guard and break his incarnation. And when Gabriel lost his grasp for a moment, that's when Kirito used the memory release of his Night Sky Sword and Eugeo's Blue Rose Sword to their fullest extent. The gentle night sky covered the entire underworld, Dark Territory and the Human Empire alike. It was unorthodox, but nobody was scared. It was as if the sky exuded a faint warmth, reaching out to every single one of them. The first person to be embraced by the night sky, as if it was one of the gentle hugs Kirito had given her, was Shinon, who was waiting for her wounds to drain her remaining HP. The feeling of the night sky was all too familiar for her. As she reached back to the call of the sky, a blue light flickered as a soul star. The darkness reached Lifa, who was also waiting for her end, followed by a gentle breeze caressing her cheek. A green star appeared in the sky. It wasn't just them. Renly, Teases, Ronye, Sortilina, everyone who had time to spend with Kirito felt it in their hearts that the gentle night sky was the sign of the Black Swordsman's final battle for the fate of the world. And those who didn't know him at all still felt the kind embrace of the darkness. And at that moment, the entire underworld started praying. It wasn't just the Human Guardian army and the Dark Territory army. Selka in Rulid village, Miss Azurika at the Swordcraft Academy, Walde twins on the outskirts of Zakaria, the operator in the central cathedral, even the citizens of the Dark Territory, all the different races. It wasn't a prayer of uniformity, everyone was saying their own prayers and wishes. Countless prayers. Let them be safe. Save the world. I love you. Dear God. All the prayers from all around the world started flowing into the Night Sky Sword in the form of countless stars enveloping the sky above Underworld like the gentle night sky. Alice immediately realized what those stars were and casted her own with her final wishes. Asuna didn't even look back. Her trust in Kirito was all she needed as the tears falling from her face turned into flickering stars and joined the rest. But it wasn't just the incarnation of the living. Memories of the deceased were also casting their own incarnation with what little they had at the very least. Shasta's lesson he learned from his duel with Bercouli about the murderous intent, encouraging words of Bercouli, reminder from the late pontifex of the ways of the world Kirito embraced during their duel, Cardinal's words about the connection of everyone's souls in Underworld, all charged into a single blow. Not a killing blow, but one that would let the one who devours all souls taste the wishes and the brilliance of this world as he so longed for. 10 strikes of Starburst stream, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, the final 16th hit had a climactic pause before it was dealt, and Subtilizer saw his opportunity in that very moment. The wings of the Angel of Death cut off Kirito's arm that would have landed the 16th hit, severing his connection to the sword. But when all hope was lost, two hands that didn't belong to him grabbed the handle of the Blue Rose sword to block the finishing blow of Gabriel, giving Kirito the opportunity for a 17th hit that never existed before in Starburst stream. And with that, Gabriel Miller tasted the collective incarnation of the entire world to a point where his soul no longer could process it, causing his demise. The moment the Angel of Death ceased to exist, Alice got logged out, successfully reaching the terminal with Asuna. All Hemisphere users disconnected due to their devices not supporting any acceleration, and Shinon and Sugua got logged out due to the satellite connection not being able to handle the unsafe acceleration. And Kirito felt the world plunge into a weird feeling that he could not describe, but he knew it meant he was now locked in this world for more than double the amount of time of his remaining projected life. With the traditionally red sky of the Dark Territory now shining a bright blue, first thing Kirito sensed was the lack of the kind presence of the flaxen-haired boy. It was now clear to him that the final clash with Gabriel consumed the remaining soul fragment inside the Blue Rose sword completely at last. And then came the startling realization as he checked the altar. He did not see anyone around at first, which must have meant they both were safely logged out too. Lack of Asuna's presence only caused the lack of his friends to hit harder. He broke down entirely, with only the sounds of his teardrops hitting the stone-paved floor of the altar. But the sound of the drops were accompanied by another sound slowly coming closer. He heard a nostalgic voice calling out his name, and he slowly started lifting his head up. And I wish that was exactly where the anime had cut this scene. It was the perfect callback to the ending of the Human Realm arc of Alicization, with Kirito hearing a nostalgic voice and his head going full blank with no longer remembering who the voice belonged to. Here we had the exact same concept, but this time, instead of losing his grasp, he regained it with the same nostalgic voice. But hey, considering the ending moment of the Human Realm arc was one of anime's biggest blunders during the entire Alicization run, I'm not surprised they did not go for it here either, so they skipped an entire chapter ahead to extend this scene into the ending of chapter 23, but even still did not adapt the 2-page long part for whatever reason. Well, not whatever reason, we all know full well they saved a 30-second clip for next week because nobody will watch the Ocean Turtle drama episode if they don't hint a Kirito Asuna screenshot in the preview. That's exactly why they did this. They also didn't adapt the scene with Gabriel Miller. Chances are we'll get it next week too, but unless you are binge watching, which if you're watching these explained episodes on release, you're watching them week by week, and thus the scene won't have the same punch as having it right after exploding out of Underworld. But hey, we're the only ones watching it week by week, so why do I even care? By the way, if you haven't realized, these remarks like, so why should I care, are sarcastic remarks, because I know there are many people who will go, who cares about these tiny details? I do, thank you very much. It's part of your narrative choices. It makes a massive difference when and how you are presented certain scenes and their delivery. Even half a second of a pause before the delivery of a single line can make a huge difference. So I'd say not having the scene right when it was meant to, as a what the actual fuck moment, takes away the punch of that said moment, you know? But yeah, while we're at it, let's end on a good note. I'll add here that it was a great addition to show the people who just logged out from Underworld trying to process what they just lived through. That was a neat anime original edition that felt very fitting for the occasion, but I got nothing else to say really. We pretty much covered the entire episode. Obviously, it's just as sad as always that inner monologues get axed from what is a mental battle in favor of a light show and yelling about, but at the very least it's done in a way that would make every shonen series watch in awe of the animation, because let's be real, that was as shonen as SAO would ever get, and the quality was only second to the consistently amazing Eugeo Babylonia, which, time to make that reference again, has pulled amazing fight scenes and choreography on every other week rather than a last hurrah for a final climax episode. But hey, maybe in 7 years Kadokawa will finally have a mobile SAO game that is not a blatant cash grab but rather have a consistent and sparing gacha experience rather than dumping 50 new marginally different units with power creep each month. Maybe they can get enough money to make Unitoloring just as great, who knows. But the fact that I'm going on a massive tangent is already the sign that I should probably wrap the video up. We got 3 more episodes left, none of which will be dedicated to Underworld specifically, but we will have some scenes back here, which I can see the weekly screenshots really banking on them for no other reason than hoping to bait you into remaining interested. This week was the Underworld conclusion of the arc. Episode 21, Beyond Time, is all about the physical conclusion of it back in real life. And from the looks of it, 22 and 23 will be the epilogue episodes, but yeah, as I said, at this point you are perfectly safe to jump into Sword Art Online volumes 19 and 20, Moon Cradle, the Alicization side story, which takes place in the 200-year accelerated period, which the anime won't be adapting in the season 3 Alicization run, as it should have been clear in the summary before, so go ahead and grab those novels. Weekly Alicization Q&A is properly back on schedule, with me publishing an episode Q&A shortly before the next episode airs, so every following Saturday. If you have questions that you feel like were not answered in the explained episodes, do ask them below in the comment section with hashtag AskGamerturk. If your question is regarding the future, please add a spoiler warning and give it a couple blank lines to push the spoilers away. And no, I will not answer spoiler questions for the sake of spoilers, like, is Kirito actually dead now? If you're that curious for spoilers, just read the books. Amazon and Book Depository links are in the description. And in regards to the questions, if you're a channel member or a Patreon supporter, your question will be prioritized, because I received way too many questions last week that I couldn't answer every single one of them in a video. But if you made it this far, comment Release Recollection to let me know. If you enjoyed this week's Explained, please do leave a like. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more in-depth coverage of SAO. With Alicization anime almost coming to a close, I will have a lot of other lovely SAO stories for you to experience in the near future, like the evening of Kirito's first day in Aincrad, where he was almost killed by another beta tester, so look forward to the first day. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter for the fastest news possible. Lens Squad merch is still around, but now we got Medina, Kirito and Eugeo merch too, so do check it out. And something special is coming for the 50k subs. A huge thanks to all my patrons and channel members as always, and until next time, stay cool.